A healthier, happier life begins here. Welcome to Mercy Moments, a podcast by Mercy Health in association with True Chat.
Did you know that roughly 50% of all animal protein consumed throughout the world comes from seafood? And that by 2030, that number will likely increase to 62%. As a result, the need for sustainable sourcing and farming of seafood is on the rise. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm the host of Mercy Moments, T. Allen Ceyler, coming to you once again from Champaign County here at True Chat Studios in Urbana, Ohio. He has a bachelor's degree in biology from The Ohio State University, a master's degree in marine sciences from Louisiana State University, and a PhD in nutritional sciences from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He was also the first president of the Ohio Aquaculture Association and the owner of Freshwater Farms. Please welcome to the program, Dr. Dave Smith. Dr. Dave, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your experience in education?
Well, there's always the formal part and the part where learning really takes place.
All right.
While it was 15 years getting through college and doing kind of what I wanted to do, I knew I wanted to be a scientist, actually was going to go into horticulture, but in my early days at Ohio State, went through a German magazine and they were doing fish farming and greenhouses.
Really?
And it kind of combined two interests of mine. So I decided to go for aquatic emphasis and things like that. That led me into aquaculture programs.
So were you originally from this area?
I'm from Urbana, born in Clark County, but raised in Urbana. So, it was my dream to get out and hit the coast. And when I had the first chance to go to Louisiana, had never been there before, thought, great, I'm going to be on the coast. And I was 3 hours away from the coast in Baton Rouge. But anyhow, I spent a lot of time in the field down there and really became appreciative of the vast marine resources of the Gulf of Mexico and how we impact that. And while we're down there looking at comparing the differences between commercial shrimp farming and what was new then, inland types of shrimp farming.
Sure.
So it was one of those things we found out it costs 3 times the energy to catch wild shrimp as to farm it intensively on land. And that kind of put me into, okay, we need to go back inland instead of trying to do things on the coast. And that really sent me not only closer to home, but back up to Wisconsin where they had an existing aquaculture program and ended up doing nutritional science major. Not too many people doing fish feed nutrition. So I was kind of the oddball in the basement with tanks and things like that. But it was a great university and gave me a good preparation for starting my own place because the lab facility was actually off campus and we had to build everything.
I see.
And so that was a great, very large institutional research center. But so that was a big help for me to move back to my hometown, find a place where we could do what I learned we could do in indoor fish farming, where we recirculate the water. That was the new thing.
So what made you finally build your own aqua farm?
My dad found this abandoned chicken farm just north of my hometown and said, look at all this space, 60,000 square feet of buildings, concrete floors, and it was cheap because it was run down. It was in bad shape. At that time in the early 80s, poultry farming was moving out of Ohio to Georgia and all those places. It's since moved back to Ohio because it's got too hot down there. But at that time, these buildings were virtually of no value to the conventional agriculture.
So what do you like most about running a successful aqua farm?
Well, after 38 years, I think I can say that. A lot of years of up and down and small starts. We just basically tried a lot of things, all the way from, how far can I stack these concrete blocks with a plastic liner before they fall over from the water? Right. Well, I could go 2 layers. Okay, well, so our first layout was doing something like that. But my father's an engineer, and he really, we worked together as a team to come up with some new ways of doing it. And we developed a farmer-friendly, inexpensive way of doing it indoors. We were actually the first in the world to be able to do it raising rainbow trout because they're a very fussy species. Everybody was raising other more tolerant fish. But that's where we started. And we're now the longest running commercial indoor fish farm in the country.
So what's been one of your biggest challenges?
Doing it economically. And that's what we really did. When I was at the university, the approaches they were doing, it was costing $2.75 a pound to raise yellow perch. And a perch was worth $1.25 at that time. So you can't make it up on margins there. But we got it down to the cost margin of operation was profitable. So that's where we started.
You touched on this earlier. So what is the difference between like freshwater farming and marine farming?
The salt. There's really the way that the industry has developed today. There's saltwater indoor, inland, as well as freshwater because we recycle so much of the water. There's even saltwater shrimp farms now in Ohio and Indiana that basically recycle 100% of their water. So they can raise virtually any species. And that's true of the industry. There's hundreds of species that are being raised.
What types of technology had to be developed to make freshwater farming more sustainable?
There were a lot of technologies out there, most of them based on engineered wastewater treatment type technologies. And they tended to be very expensive, lots of expensive pieces of equipment. We went the other route. What can we do that does the same thing, but on a cost-effective and simple to use and build?
I see.
Our sophisticated processes use pea gravel, cut up field tile, and concrete blocks.
So is the demand for aqua farming truly increasing?
No reason to think it's the only way we have to go. I mean, captive fisheries, wild fisheries plateaued about 10 years ago, and it's starting to decline. I mean, the catch per unit effort, which is how you measure things, just keeps going up and up and up. They have to work. Those poor guys that do commercial salmon vessels and things, they fill their ship with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of diesel fuel.
Right.
And then they may or may not get something. It's a tough life, and it's a very energy intensive industry. But, we've always depended on that in the past, but we can't keep doing that. Right. So that's where we come in, that we can do things more energy efficiently and under control conditions. So we know we have clean water, we have clean feed, and we end up with clean fish.
So are there types of aqua farming that are easier than others?
Oh, absolutely. Like I say, some fish are more tolerant. So a lot of people have chosen to raise tilapia, but unfortunately it's a tropical fish. So that takes some energy use there. And it's hard for us to compete with tropical countries when it comes to raising that type of fish. So we've looked to more native species, rainbow trout, yellow perch, bluegill, things like that are people know. So we're not introducing a new species, and the market values are incredibly good.
So what types of fish or other seafood are the most popular?
Right now, the most popular seafood in the world is shrimp. It used to be tuna, but now it's shrimp. So there's freshwater shrimp farms, there's saltwater fish farms, and the production of shrimp in worldwide terms is now, the majority of it is farmed. And it's farmed usually in good ways. There's a few exceptions to that. China still has some problems. They're still educating their farmers, and to the point where they hired 40,000 extension agents a few years back. It's incredible. We have 2. But it's a different situation. We're a lot more sophisticated in this country as far as regulations and making sure things are done well.
So are there types of seafood that don't translate well into aqua farming? Like, is there certain things that you found that just don't work well? Yeah,
there certainly are. I mean, there's a lot of interest in raising what I would call fast food fish, not fast food restaurant, but fast fish like tuna, mahi, fish, pelagic fish that are used to swimming at great speeds all the time. So those are more challenging.
So how does aeration factor in? I noticed on your website, you touch on aeration quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Well, that's when you're providing the environment for the fish, the number one first limiting factor is oxygen. So we aerate our tanks so we can have more in a tank. The second thing is ammonia, and that's where our filters, biofilter systems with the pea gravel and things foster the good bacteria that convert all those waste so it's not toxic to the fish, and then we can keep using the water. It also allows us to reuse heated water. So it allows us to pick different species, different, whether it's a cold water species or cool water or a warm water.
So how do you get the right balance?
The balance is pretty much, we've developed a system that, especially after the first 6 months and it's matured, it's very stable. So we really are depending on these natural processes that adapt and create that equilibrium of, and you have to monitor how much you're feeding. And we basically let the fish tell us how they're feeling. If they're feeding really great, then we know everything's fine. If they're starting to slow down, then we go, okay, let's check the ammonia. Let's check the oxygen levels, things like that. But normally we don't have to. It's like I said, we try to keep it simple.
So what are the different processes of a successful aqua farm? I know like hatchery is one example. Like what are the different steps that it takes to get to the end product?
Well, that's a really good question because, you have to have your source of fry. You have to have a place to raise. You have to have a grow out. You have to have processing and marketing and all that. At Freshwater Farms, we've been vertically integrated since the beginning. We do buy our eggs often from other specialized hatcheries and then hatch them and raise them all the way up and process them. We've been a certified seafood processor since 1993 when it first started.
So how does feed play into this process?
Well, as you might guess from my background, fish feed is really my specialty. And we've seen a lot of changes over the years where pretty much in the 70s, when it was really starting to get commercial scale, people were using a lot of fish meal.
I see.
Because there was what was called trash fish, menhaden meal, sardines, things like that were a heavy component. We've gone from where that might have been 50 to 70% of the diet to where it's maybe 5%, because now we're using soybeans and corn products and whatever, most of which can be grown in the Midwest. We now have become sophisticated enough in the industry that we can blend, like all the other livestock, we can blend on a least cost formulation, those types of different ingredients as they're available. Here in Urbana in the early 2000s, we actually were part of the first commercial fish meal free diet for salmon and trout. It was called Freedom Feeds. And we, with partners that I joined with, we developed that feed. It was a little hard sell because it was, just not quite up to the fish meal standard at that time. And we did find we even tried doing organic, but the organic board said it's not natural, so they wouldn't certify as organic, even though we could use organic grains and whatnot. So that was frustrating. And eventually, after about 6 years, we closed the plant. The next year, fish meal prices tripled, and everybody else is now doing what we did here in Urbana in the early 2000s.
So that changes the taste of the fish, right?
Not when you're using the good fish oil.
I see.
That is the last piece of the puzzle. And of course, the fish oil has the omega-3s. They're so essential, not only for us, but for the fish as well. And those are all originally derived from microalgae production in the ocean or wherever, or in freshwater systems even. But that is, there's now different plant sources of omega-3s. There's people that are making omega-3s with fermentation of bacteria that have been modified to produce that. I mean, there's a lot of new things going, but right now we pretty much depend on the fish oil that is providing that healthy fraction of the diet.
So what are some important aspects of aqua farming that people often overlook?
I think probably the first thing, especially in this country, is they get a lot of bad information. And part of that is there was some confusion in the Northwest with wild salmon and farm salmon. And there was basically it was started by the wild salmon people who were having to market theirs at 3 times the price as the farmed. So they were taking a big hit, and it happened within just a few years. But there was a lot of stuff that was put out there about, this has more contamination than the other. And they were arguing about 20 versus 60 parts per billion of this, that, the other. And the safety limit was 2,000 parts per billion. So it was a false argument. Both of them are fine. The wild salmon is great. Farm salmon is fine too. And the other thing that comes with that is they've been told that farmers use antibiotics and hormones, and that's totally illegal. No one uses that in this country. So it's that, again, you fight some of those things, but again, we always come back to explain to people, look, we have clean water, clean feed, and clean fish. And that's truly for aquaculture in this country. So
in addition to demand and sustainability, why would someone start an aqua farm, do you believe?
Well, I've helped start a dozen other fish farms in this area and the surrounding states. And a lot of the best people I enjoy working with are people that are already farmers. already know how to take care of animals. Some of them were hog farmers, some were chicken farmers, some were grain farmers.
Interesting.
But they always came to me and said, after I raised my product, no one ever came to me to buy my soybeans. And we found that, as we tried to create a network, we said, we'll buy all the fish you produce because we have the markets. And with no exception, as soon as they produced fish, wherever they were, Indiana, wherever, the local people jumped on them and they had, all the customers they needed. So that is one truly different thing about fish farming than virtually any other kind, because it's such a in-demand product.
Well, that pretty much does it for the first segment. In the second segment, I'd like to talk a little bit more about Freshwater Farms, how it fits into the aqua farming culture, and some of its other offerings and events. We'd like to take this time to remind our listeners that all of True Chat's podcasts help pursue a common goal: to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations and information. To learn more about Mercy Moments, listen to the recap at the end of the program, and to search for previous episodes or find ways to listen, please visit us at mercymoments.org. Welcome back. So our topic today has been about aqua farming and freshwater farms, and our speaker has been Dr. Dave Smith. Dr. Dave, welcome back.
Here I am.
So now, when you first bought the property, it was a bankrupt chicken farm, correct?
And I got to tell you that was in 1983.
Wow.
And when we went to the bank to get a loan to buy this farm that nobody had interest in, the bank president actually went with me and walked through these dusty, manure-filled barns and said, I think there's some potential here. So I give great credit to Vince Bailey, the president of Champaign National Bank back in the day, that they believed in what we saw, what our vision was. And I think that's true for small towns and rural communities, that we've found a lot of great benefits from being here and having the support of the local community.
Right, because it does take a leap of faith there when you consider that you're telling them that you're going to take a bankrupt chicken farm and grow fish. So,
well, I can tell you, my father-in-law, who was a retired, he was still an extension at that time, thought, you're never going to make a business raising fish.
So what exactly did it take to turn it into a successful aqua farm?
One step at a time. Start small. We try a lot of things, shoot for about 10% of things that we try work. If they don't work, we still have learned something and we try something else. And that's kind of a great approach for anyone. But we really have expanded as we could, and a lot of family-free labor helping us get started. I mean, it would never have happened without that. My mother was in charge of the hatchery, her babies, for a long time.
Really?
And so that was a big part of what happened.
So for those that don't exactly know, where are you guys located?
Oh, we're just 1 mile north of Urbana, right on U.S. Highway 68. So it's, I like to say it was all great advanced planning, but we actually had a great location.
Right.
Lots of exposure and sitting on top of one of the biggest aquifers in the world.
Huh.
I mean, here in Champaign County, we have just copious groundwater, and it's good groundwater.
So besides the aqua farm, what other things do you guys offer out there?
Well, that's as we developed and we started raising fish, and we actually, in one barn, we had our store in the fish barn. And so we greeted people there, put up deli cases, and, you couldn't have your own store in your hog barn, but you could in a fish barn because there's no smell. I mean, it's a very clean type of a thing. But we started to see that people were interested in what we were doing and wanted to see more. And my mother would give every visitor at one point a 45-minute tour because we were anxious to show. We were proud of what we'd done. But that kind of grown over the years to we appreciate the educational part of what we're doing and what we can show people, and to have just fun, for hands-on activities for the kids to feed the trout. And that developed into some other things. We now have the world's first sturgeon petting zoo. Our sturgeon now are 29 years old and 6 feet long.
Yeah, those are amazing.
And so that's been a great fun. And we have touch tanks with salamanders and turtles and toads and crawfish and all kinds of things that are extremely popular. I think the toads are probably the number one thing that kids come in, they're taking pictures of each other. And it's one of those things that kids miss now that in my day, we played in the creek,
right,
during the day and spent a lot of time outside. So we're kind of trying to provide some of those experiences at Freshwater Farms, that there's things to do outside, there's things to see. And we've really enjoyed that.
And we touched on this earlier. Now, you guys sell Aeration Systems also, correct?
We do. We ended up selling we sell all the types of equipment and supplies and things for garden ponds to big fishing ponds to, corporate ponds, that type of thing.
So how far involved do you actually get with helping set people up in the aqua farming business?
Not as much as I used to. I used to spend a lot of time doing that. We're not so much now. We are an open book that they can come and see and look at what we're doing. We're working with several other universities that are now getting into it. Bowling Green State University and Central State University are just now getting in. Ohio State's been into it for a while, and I was part of that early process of setting things up. But that was, a long time ago. We were the first ones on the block for a lot of things. But anyhow, so that's happening, but not in a direct way. I used to do a lot of consulting, but I do not have time for that anymore. I'm more interested in developing our educational experiences at the farm. And we've expanded now into demonstrating eco-farming that goes along with our water reuse, our nutrient capture. We have produce fields where we use our fish water to irrigate melons and peppers and tomatoes and things like that. But I must admit that our first crop from Freshwater Farms in 1986 were watermelons and muskmelons.
Really?
It only took us 3 months to raise those, and it takes a year and a half for the fish. So we, with some other people locally in 1988, started the farmers market, Champaign County's farmers market, and started selling melons and our fish.
That reminds me. So you guys hold events out there throughout the year also, correct?
21 years ago, we started the Ohio Fish and Shrimp Festival in Urbana. It was a kind of a downtown revitalization effort. It kind of outgrew that space, and now it's held at the farm, at Freshwater Farms every year. This is our 20th edition. 2020 was a no-go, but we came back in a small way last year, and this year we expect to be back. The Ohio Fish and Shrimp Festival normally has 5,000 or 10,000 people over 3 days. So that's coming up.
So how did all that get started with the Shrimp and Fish Festival?
Well, that was, like I said, it was, we were actually working with Main Street Urbana to come up with the first time that we raised freshwater shrimp. We said, oops, this is different. This is a hook. Let's see if we can't run with that as something to make a unique festival. And that's really the thing that triggered it. That was also part of that Freedom Feed experiment, because we had feed that left over, it wasn't a right batch. We could feed it to the shrimp.
I see.
They're not fussy. They are great scavengers. And so we raised some beautiful freshwater shrimp. Now there's other people that raise that in Ohio and Kentucky and bring that fresh to the festival. That's part of the lure, but we've kind of developed, I have a great interest in music. My son was a music major as well at Ohio State, and we have a permanent stage and facilities for many vendors and whatnot that we've developed over the years. So it ends up being just a fun festival.
And you touched on earlier some of the tours that you give? Yeah,
we're open for self-guided tours 6 days a week, 10 to 6. Our fish barn is actually under remodeling right now, so that part of it inside is closed for maybe another week, but that will be reopened, and that's year-round.
Yeah, that's a good point. So tell us a little bit more about the retail side of it as far as the store.
When you've been doing things for 38 years, there's a lot of phases you go through, and one of the big things we did for 16 years was wholesaling to area restaurants and markets in Dayton and Columbus. We had 40 different accounts that we serviced twice a week, every week of the year. At that point, we had to start buying live trout from other farms around the Midwest. We were the processor. They got fresh that day. And then we opened our retail store, and it took every fish that we could get our hands on to supply the need of that retail. So we had to stop the wholesale. Got to admit, I don't miss it, because that was a lot of work. But now we have a retail outlet, and all of the fish now are just what we raise from egg. The prices for all the other trout farms, it's too high. The demand for it is too much. So we can't compete if we're buying somebody else's fish.
And you still prepare seafood, right, for the public?
Yes, we do a lot of prepared foods. They say, it's been true for some time that most people get their seafood at restaurants because there's so many people that feel intimidated to cook fish and seafood and shrimp and things like that. We do a lot of value added. I didn't mention that my program at University of Wisconsin, my minor was in food science. So we kind of have some ideas of how to do those things. We've been making trout burgers in 5 different flavors for 20 years. Now we have chowders and things like that. Now we make lobster mac and cheese, jambalaya with crawfish, stuffed peppers with shrimp and sausage. I mean, a lot of this, we even upped the game during the pandemic because we had so many takeout meals that people wanted. And so our online store and our offerings of different things have really expanded at Freshwater Farms. So we have not only all that, but we have what we call the Dr. Dave approved seafood, because there's so much confusion about different sources of different types, whether it's shrimp or mahi-mahi or walleye or perch, whatever. And so we offer them this. We vetted, we know this was done right. It's clean stuff. It's been done sustainably. And we work hard to get that. It's like some of the tilapia. We make sure it's only from Costa Rica, not China, and things like that. But walleye is all Canadian walleye, and it's really great stuff. So there's a lot of different products we sell that flesh out our seafood department. And then we have, all the other departments for local art, local, produce things, honeys and jams and all those local beers and wines. And so it's really has developed now. And my wife is in charge of the store. She's a retired nurse from the medical field.
Is she really?
Yeah, but retired just before the pandemic, thankfully. And so she's hit the ground running. And the third of our business is the fountains that we actually make for ponds. It's our Watersmith brand. My son's actually in charge of that, and we've been doing that now for almost 20 years. So it's become very sophisticated, and we offer a lot of lower cost alternatives for pond aeration and decorative fountains and lights and all that type of thing.
And you guys have a website also, correct?
Yeah, it's very simple. We've had it for a long time. fwfarms.com.
So are there any other ways to get a hold of you guys?
Well, you can always call us. We have an 800 number, 1-800-634-7434, or our regular number is 937-652-3701. And we love talking to you and go from there. But like I say, our store is open 6 days a week, 10 to 6. Just close on Sundays.
Well, that pretty much does it for the program today. A quick reminder, our goal here at Mercy Moments is to promote local resources, awareness, and involvement. Therefore, if you have any questions or comments related to past episodes or have suggestions for future programs, please contact us at taceyler@mercy.com. That's capital taceyler@mercy.com. Again, I'd like to thank my guest today, Dr. Dave Smith, for being here. You can listen to Mercy Moments on TrueChat via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or anywhere else fine podcasts are found. For Mercy Moments, Mercy Health Urbana Hospital, and TrueChat, I'm your host, T. Alan Ceyler.